You have to sell your house, Angela. Lindsay needs that money for her divorce settlement, my mother demanded, her voice shrill with desperation. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting shadows across the familiar oak table where we'd shared countless family meals. Now it felt like an interrogation chamber. I worked 15 years for that house, I said, my voice trembling. It's everything I have. Everything you have? My father scoffed. What about family? What about your sister? She's going to lose everything in this divorce. My name is Angela, and at 35, I never expected to be fighting my own parents over the house I'd worked so hard to own. I run a small gift shop in downtown Austin that I built from scratch, working 60-hour weeks and living in a tiny studio apartment until I could finally afford my dream home. My sister Lindsay, on the other hand, had married Richard, a wealthy real estate developer, right out of college. She'd spent the last decade hosting lavish parties and vacationing in Europe while I was building my business. Now that Richard was divorcing her for his younger assistant, my parents expected me to bail her out. Lindsay's lifestyle isn't my responsibility, I said firmly. I can't just give up my house because she spent all her money on designer clothes and fancy cars. My mother's face crumpled. How can you be so selfish? Your sister is about to be homeless. I almost laughed at that. Lindsay's idea of homeless meant moving out of her 5-bedroom mansion into a regular house like mine. She'd never worked a day in her life, always depending on our parents' support until Richard came along. Now they expected me to be her safety net. She can get a job like everyone else, I suggested, earning gasps of horror from both my parents. A job? At her age? My mother clutched her chest like I'd suggested Lindsay should become a circus performer. She doesn't have any experience. You know how sensitive she is. The familiar weight of their expectations pressed down on me. Ever since we were kids, I'd been the responsible one, the steady one, while Lindsay was too delicate for real life. Now, after years of finally building something for myself, they wanted me to give it all up for her again. Growing up, my parents had always treated Lindsay and me differently. While I worked summer jobs and saved for college, Lindsay got new cars and unlimited credit cards because she was too artistic for mundane concerns. When I started my business, maxing out my credit cards and working day and night, my parents called it my little hobby. But when Lindsay wanted to become an interior decorator for wealthy clients, mainly her friends from the country club, they paid for an elaborate office and marketing campaign. The business lasted 3 months before she got bored. I thought about all the times I'd stepped aside, letting Lindsay take center stage. The family vacation funds that went to her spring break trips because she needed the experience for her social development. The college money that paid for her semester abroad while I worked 2 jobs to cover my tuition. Even my graduation party turned into an engagement celebration when Lindsay announced Richard had proposed. Remember how much we helped you with your shop? My father's voice cut through my memories. We co-signed your first lease. I took a deep breath. You co-signed because the landlord was your golf buddy, and you got a great deal. I never missed a payment. That's not the point, my mother interjected. We're family. We support each other. Lindsay supported you too. She told all her friends about your shop. Yes, Lindsay had told her wealthy friends about my quaint little store, bringing them in to browse and comment on how cute everything was, never buying anything because it wasn't expensive enough for their taste. She'd even suggested I sell the business and come work as her personal assistant once she married Richard. You're so good with details, she'd said, like my dream was just a stepping stone to serving her. The shop had survived because of my regular customers, middle-class women who appreciated unique, affordable gifts. I'd built relationships with local artisans, carefully curated my inventory, and created a warm, welcoming space that reflected my vision, not Lindsay's idea of what it should be. I can help Lindsay find an apartment, I offered. I can help her update her resume, but I won't sell my house. My parents exchanged a look I knew too well, the one that meant they weren't done pushing. My mother's lips tightened into a thin line, and my father's fingers drummed against the table. They had something else planned, And knowing them, it wouldn't be good. My father leaned forward, his voice dropping to that quiet tone he used when delivering ultimatums. Angela, there's something you should know. Your mother and I have been talking to Aunt Patricia about that summer you stayed with her during college. My blood ran cold. That summer, I'd caught Aunt Patricia's husband embezzling money from their family business. He'd begged me to keep quiet, promising to pay it back. I'd agreed, young and scared, watching from a distance as he eventually returned the money through profitable investments. Only my parents knew the truth, or part of it. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been thinking about how devastating it would be for Cousin James to learn about his father's situation," my mother said delicately, "especially now that he's running for city council." The threat hung in the air like smoke. They would twist the story, make it seem like I'd helped cover up the crime. James would believe them. He always did. My reputation, my business, everything I'd built could be ruined. "You wouldn't," I whispered, but I knew they would. They'd do anything for Lindsay. "We don't want to," my father said softly. "You're our daughter, too. We love you. But Lindsay needs this. She's not strong like you. She can't handle being poor." The word "too" echoed in my head. You're our daughter, too. Always second, always the afterthought. I stood up, my chair scraping against the tile floor. "You know what? Go ahead. Tell everyone. But first, maybe we should talk about those property deals you helped Richard make, Dad. The ones that somehow always got approved even when they violated zoning laws." My father's face paled. "How did you—" "I have friends at City Hall. They keep records. Really interesting records." I pulled out my phone, showing him the emails I'd collected over the years, just in case. "And Mom, should we discuss the real reason Lindsay's last business failed? The missing investor money that mysteriously ended up in her personal account?" My mother's hands began to shake. We were protecting her. "No," I cut her off. "You were enabling her. And now you want to destroy me to protect her again. Well, not this time." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, my heart pounding but my mind clear. For the first time in my life, I was done being the responsible one, the one who kept quiet and played along. They'd pushed me too far, and now they'd learn exactly how strong I could be. The next week crawled by in a blur of angry phone calls and text messages. Lindsay showed up at my shop 3 times, crying in front of customers about how I was destroying our family. My parents called every relative in their contact list, trying to pressure me through guilt and manipulation. But they didn't mention Aunt Patricia's husband. My evidence had backed them into a corner. Then my mother called with an invitation that was really a demand. "We're having a family dinner on Saturday. Everyone will be there. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Robert, James, all the cousins. We need to resolve this as a family." I knew what they were planning. They'd gather everyone, paint me as the selfish daughter refusing to help her poor sister, and pressure me into submission through sheer force of family disapproval. They'd done it before, but never with these stakes. I spent the next few days preparing. I gathered bank statements showing every loan payment I'd made without help. I collected emails documenting Lindsay's failed businesses and the money our parents had poured into them. I even had photos of the apartment I'd lived in while building my shop, a stark contrast to Lindsay's mansion bought with Richard's money. When Saturday arrived, I dressed carefully in a simple black dress and pearls, the ones my grandmother had left me, not the designer jewelry Lindsay usually wore. I walked into my parents' house to find exactly what I'd expected. Every relative within a 100-mile radius all wearing expressions of concern and disappointment. "Oh, Angela," Aunt Patricia hugged me stiffly. "We're so worried about you, dear. This isn't like you being so stubborn." I smiled politely, noting how she avoided meeting my eyes. Behind her, James stood with his campaign manager, an interesting choice for a family dinner. My mother had positioned Lindsay at the center of the living room, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief while relatives patted her shoulder. "Before we eat," my father announced once everyone had arrived, We need to discuss something as a family. Angela, your behavior lately has been concerning to all of us. I felt the weight of 24 pairs of eyes turn to me. This was their power play, public shame as a weapon. My mother stepped forward, ready to deliver the speech I knew she'd practiced all week. Actually, I interrupted, my voice steady. I have something to share first. I've prepared a presentation about family, responsibility, and the truth about the past 10 years. I pulled out my tablet, watching my parents' faces shift from confidence to fear. They hadn't expected me to fight back. Not here, not like this. But I wasn't their compliant daughter anymore. I connected my tablet to the TV screen, the same one where we'd watched countless family slideshows and holiday movies. Let's start with some numbers, I said, pulling up my first document. This is what I paid for my house, $280,000, and here's my mortgage history, showing every payment I made myself. Angela, my mother warned, but I continued. And here are Lindsay's bank statements from her interior design business. The screen showed transactions flowing from the business account to Nordstrom, Saks, and luxury car payments. Notice how the investor money, $175,000 in total, disappeared within 3 months, none of it spent on actual business expenses. Lindsay jumped up. Those were business clothes. I had to look professional. And this, I swiped to the next document, is Dad's email exchange with Richard about the Henderson property deal. The one that magically got rezoned after thousands of dollars in consulting fees changed hands. The campaign manager stepped forward, suddenly very interested. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. But let's talk about more recent history, I continued. Here's the prenup Lindsay signed, waiving her right to Richard's business assets. And here's her credit card statement from last month, $30,000 at Gucci while she was crying about being broke. The room had gone completely silent. Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls. James stared at his phone, probably already damage controlling his campaign. My cousins whispered among themselves, eyeing Lindsay with newfound suspicion. You see, I turned to face my family. I kept quiet for years. I watched Lindsay blow through money while I built something real. I listened to lectures about family duty while she spent and spent. But I won't be blackmailed into giving up everything I've worked for. How dare you? My mother's voice shook. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done? I laughed. Let's talk about that too. Here's my college tuition receipts showing how I paid my own way. Here's the lease for my shop with the family discount that actually charged me above market rate. Here's... Enough! My father shouted. This is private family business. No, Dad. You made it public when you invited everyone here to gang up on me. You wanted to talk about family? Let's talk. Let's really talk. Lindsay burst into tears, real ones this time, and ran from the room. My mother followed, calling her name. The campaign manager was already heading for the door, phone pressed to his ear. Several relatives suddenly remembered other commitments. I stood my ground, tablet in hand, watching my parents' carefully constructed narrative crumble around them. In the chaos that followed, my father tried one last time to regain control. If you don't delete those emails right now, he hissed, you'll regret it. I already sent copies to my lawyer, I replied calmly, and if anything happens to me or my business, they'll go straight to the ethics board. Aunt Patricia stepped between us, her face ashen. Robert, perhaps we should discuss James's campaign situation privately. She steered my father away, leaving me facing my mother, who had returned without Lindsay. How could you? She demanded, tears streaming down her face. Your own sister. You mean like how you threatened to destroy my reputation to help her? I cut in. Or how you covered up her embezzlement. That kind of, how could you? The remaining relatives shifted uncomfortably. Cousin Rachel, always the family peacemaker, tried to intervene. Maybe we should all take some time to... No, I said firmly. I've taken enough time. 20 years of watching Lindsay get everything while I worked myself to exhaustion. 20 years of being told I had to sacrifice because she was sensitive. Well, I'm done. My mother's tears dried instantly. If you walk out that door, you're no longer part of this family. I looked around the room, at the family photos where Lindsay always stood front and center, at the wall of achievements displaying her certificates and awards, while mine gathered dust in a box somewhere, at the faces of relatives who had always taken her side without question. You know what, Mom? I haven't been part of this family for a long time. I was just the ATM you kept in reserve for when Lindsay needed bailing out. That's not true, she protested, but her voice wavered. Then name one time you stood up for me instead of her. One time you put my needs first. The silence that followed was deafening. That's what I thought. I gathered my things, feeling lighter with each step toward the door. Behind me, I could hear my mother starting to spin the story already. Poor Lindsay, horrible Angela, ungrateful daughter. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out, and I was free. Angela, my father called as I reached the door. When you've calmed down, don't call me, I said without turning around. Don't come to my shop. Don't contact me at all. I mean it. I walked out into the evening air, taking my first deep breath in what felt like years. My phone buzzed with messages, probably relatives choosing sides already, but I ignored it. I had protected what was mine, and that was all that mattered. The weeks following the family confrontation were both challenging and liberating. I changed my phone number, blocked family emails, and focused on my business. My shop had always been my sanctuary, but now it felt even more like home. My regular customers noticed the change in me. I stood taller, smiled more easily, stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Lindsay made one last attempt to reach me, showing up at closing time with puffy eyes and a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I had to sell my Mercedes, she sobbed. I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment like some kind of peasant. You're living like a normal person, I corrected her, continuing to count the day's receipts. Millions of people do it every day. But I'm not like other people. She collapsed into one of my display chairs, the vintage ones I'd refinished myself. Mom and Dad can't help anymore. The bank is asking questions about the business loans. Everything's falling apart. For the first time, I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Despite the expensive clothes and perfect makeup, she seemed smaller somehow. Less like the golden child who could do no wrong, and more like someone finally facing reality. Get a job, I suggested, not unkindly. Start small. Learn to manage money. Grow up. A job? She said it like I'd suggested she try living on Mars. I don't have any skills. Then learn some. Take classes. Do what everyone else does. She stared at me for a long moment, then her face hardened. This is all your fault. If you just sold your house... Get out! I pointed to the door. And don't come back. That was the last time I saw her. Through the grapevine, I heard she'd moved in with our parents, who were now struggling with their own financial problems. The scandal had forced my father to retire early, and several of his business deals were under investigation. My mother had to cancel her country club membership, a tragedy she made sure everyone knew about. Meanwhile, I threw myself into expanding my business. I hired 2 part-time employees, started an online store, and began hosting craft workshops that quickly became popular. Every success felt like a vindication, proof that I'd made the right choice in standing up for myself. The most surprising support came from Aunt Patricia. She sent me a letter, handwritten on her expensive stationery, thanking me for keeping her husband's secret all those years ago and apologizing for not seeing how Lindsay and my parents had treated me. You were always the strong one, she wrote, but that doesn't mean you deserve to carry everyone else's burdens. Her words hit home. I had been strong, too strong for too long. I'd let my family take advantage of that strength, twist it into an obligation to fix their problems. Breaking free wasn't weakness. It was finally having the courage to use my strength for myself. In the following months, I discovered what real freedom felt like. I redecorated my house, painting walls and replacing furniture that I'd chosen to please my mother's taste rather than my own. I joined a business owners group, making genuine friendships with women who celebrated my successes instead of trying to diminish them. The family drama didn't completely disappear. Relatives still tried to play peacemaker, sending messages about how my parents were lost without me, and how Lindsay was struggling to adjust. Some implied I was being cruel, holding on to a grudge when family should forgive and forget. But there was nothing to forgive. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done with the manipulation, done with the guilt, done with being the responsible one who had to fix everything. My cousin Rachel visited the shop one day, trying to convince me to attend the upcoming family Christmas gathering. "Lindsay's really changed," she insisted. "She's working as a receptionist now, a real job, and your parents miss you so much." "They miss having someone to solve their problems," I replied, arranging a new display of handmade candles. "They haven't tried to understand why I left or apologize for what they did. They just want things back to normal." "But that's how family works," Rachel argued. "We forgive each other." "No, that's how toxic families work. They hurt you, then demand forgiveness without changing anything." I handed her a candle, one of my best sellers. "Here, on the house, but please stop trying to fix things that aren't broken. I'm happier now." And I was. My business had its best year ever. I started dating again, meeting men who weren't intimidated by my success or put off by my boundaries. I even bought an investment property, a small retail space next door to my shop that I could expand into when the current tenant's lease expired. The final test came when I heard Lindsay was getting married again, to a wealthy divorcee she'd met at a charity event. My mother made sure word got back to me about the upcoming wedding, probably hoping I'd offer to help with expenses. Instead, I sent a small gift with a card that read, "I wish you happiness and wisdom in your new life." The gift was returned unopened, with a note from my mother calling me petty and spiteful. I placed both the gift and the note in a box in my attic, a reminder of why I'd chosen this path. Then I went back to my shop, where a new shipment of inventory needed unpacking, and a class of aspiring entrepreneurs was waiting to learn about small business management. "Your story inspired me," one of the students told me after class. "I've been letting my family talk me out of starting my own business for years. But if you could stand up to yours, maybe I can too." I smiled, recognizing my old self in her uncertain expression. "The hardest part isn't starting the business," I told her. "It's believing you deserve to succeed. Everything else follows from that." 3 years have passed since that confrontational family dinner. My shop has expanded into the space next door, and I've opened a second location across town. The irony isn't lost on me. While trying to force me to give up my house to support Lindsay, my parents actually pushed me to achieve more than I ever dreamed possible. Last week I ran into James at a local coffee shop. His campaign had failed after the scandal, but he seemed happier, more genuine. He told me Lindsay's second marriage had already ended. Apparently, her new husband had gotten tired of her spending habits too. My parents had to downsize to a small condo, their retirement plans derailed by the investigations into my father's business dealings. "They still don't understand what they did wrong," James said, stirring his coffee. "Aunt Helen keeps saying if you'd just helped Lindsay that first time, none of this would have happened." I thought about that on my drive home, how they still saw me as the cause of their problems rather than the consequence of their actions. The old me would have felt guilty, responsible somehow. But I've learned that their inability to face reality isn't my burden to bear. The house they wanted me to sell has become my favorite place in the world. Each room represents a choice I made to value myself, to stand up for what I'd earned. It's not just a home anymore. It's a testament to my freedom. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd given in to their demands that day. I'd probably be living in a small rental somewhere, watching Lindsay squander my sacrifice while my parents praised her for trying her best. I'd still be the family ATM, expected to bail them out of every crisis while putting my own dreams on hold. Instead, I'm thriving. My business seminars are always full, mostly with women who've faced similar pressures from family or friends. I teach them what I learned the hard way, that success means nothing if you let others take it from you, and that real love doesn't come with conditions or demands. Last month, I received a wedding invitation from Cousin Rachel's daughter. Inside was a handwritten note. You showed me it's okay to be strong, to stand up for yourself. I hope you'll come. I sent my RSVP with a simple yes. I'm not afraid of family gatherings anymore. They have no power over me now. The family that once tried to shame me into submission has lost their grip on my life. My parents and Lindsay are still stuck in their cycle of enablement and excuses, but I'm no longer part of it. I've built something better, a life where I can be proud of my strength instead of having it used against me. The house they wanted me to sell? I just finished renovating the master bathroom. Every morning, I look in that new mirror and see someone who finally learned to put herself first. And I've never felt more at home.